It's Radhika from Radhika Storyline, and we're going to talk about Days of Our Lives. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, today on Days of Our Lives, we saw EJ do what EJ does best, which is smile like a gentleman while sounding like a man fully prepared to ruin somebody's life. He was over at Bayview with Rachel, giving her chess advice of all things, which is already a little ominous because on this show nobody talks strategy unless they are about to pull something diabolical. And then Kristen walked in and immediately looked horrified, because of course she did. If you walk in and find EJ charming your daughter figure or niece or whoever happens to be in his orbit that day, you know something ugly is brewing. And Kristen wasted no time tossing Rachel out so she could confront him, and EJ was weirdly cheerful about all of it, which honestly is when he's at his scariest. He tells Kristen he gave his word not to raise a hand against Rachel, his beloved niece, and then basically follows that up with, "But you though? Different story." I mean, he may as well have handed her a written notice labeled "Your reckoning is scheduled for immediate processing." Kristen tries to protest her innocence again, and EJ is so beyond over it that he promises the fallout will be merciless and quick. Not dramatic at all, EJ. Totally normal family conversation. And then, because this is Salem and nobody can ever just stop with one menace at a time, Rachel comes back in and Kristen has to do that fake calm parent thing where she asks what they talked about while clearly panicking inside. Rachel shrugs that it wasn't much, then asks what Kristen and EJ were talking about, and Kristen lies straight to her face and says it's nothing to worry about. Which, honestly, when somebody in Salem says nothing to worry about, you should start packing a go bag. Kristen's staring out the window after that was such a giveaway that she knows this is not one of EJ's empty threats. Now, over with Lexie and Paulina, the mood got heavy in a very soap way because Lexie goes to Paulina to tell her she's not sticking around. And Paulina, who has seen just about everything, is still visibly crushed by it. But then Lexie makes it even more devastating by saying she isn't going to tell Abe and Theo. She doesn't want them watching her die again. And I have to say, I get the emotional logic there, I really do, but it's also one of those plans that sounds workable only until you remember people tend to notice when their loved one vanishes and then dies. Like, that's not exactly subtle. Still, Lexie's pain came through. She doesn't want her family to relive that trauma, and she is determined to spare them, even if the choice is brutal. And Paulina doesn't fully agree, which makes sense, but she respects Lexie's decision. Lexie also admits she's furious at EJ for doing this, and that part mattered, because even while she says she would choose this again just to feel life and love again, the anger is still there. That's important. She's not at peace with what happened. She's grateful for time. Yes, but there's a price attached, and EJ is standing right in the middle of it. And then she asks about Kelsey, which is such a soap little pivot from existential tragedy to baby crisis in half a breath. So, over at the hospital, Kayla tells Stephanie she can't really explain what's going on with Joy and Kelsey, other than that they'll both be okay. Selective HIPAA strikes again, and honestly Salem doctors have always practiced medicine with a side of plot convenience. Stephanie is relieved, but then she confesses that she deleted Joy's voicemail from Alex's phone. And Kayla is horrified, but only sort of. That scene was funny in a low-key way because Kayla clearly knows that was wrong while also knowing exactly why Stephanie did it. Joy has been shady, or at the very least intensely dramatic, and Stephanie was acting out of insecurity and jealousy, which is bad, yes, but also very human and very soap. Then Alex rushes in and sees Kelsey's bassinet empty, and Joy does that thing where she takes just a little too long to explain. So he gets maximum panic before learning Kelsey is fine, and only getting x-rays for a bruise. I'm sorry, but if Joy is not playing a game, she sure knows how to stage a reveal. Kayla comes back with the baby and says it's just a bruised clavicle, nothing catastrophic. Thank goodness. They can take Kelsey home. But the whole moment leaves Stephanie spiraling, because once Kayla steps out, Stephanie starts wondering if Joy maybe caused the accident herself. And look, that is a huge accusation, but Days definitely wanted us thinking it. Does Joy still love Alex? Is she trying to pull him back in? Is this a disaster or a setup? The show practically underlined the question. Back inside the room, Alex blames himself for the accident because the spare tire he put on burst, and he also admits he didn't push Joy to get the car fixed because he was afraid Stephanie would get upset. That is one of those situations where everybody's insecurities somehow teamed up to create a real-world consequence, and that's why these triangles get so messy. Then Joy tells him she left him a voicemail, and surprise, surprise, it's gone. So now the missing message becomes a giant flashing red sign over Stephanie's head. And then Marlena shows up at Bayview, but instead of Rachel, she finds Kristen, who breaks down practically on contact. She needs Marlena's help because EJ is out to get her. Marlena is concerned, but in that very Marlena way where she has seen EJ threaten people for years and knows he loves the sound of his own menace. Still, Kristen makes it clear this time feels different. Rachel should be safe, but Kristen is not. And she asks Marlena to be there for Rachel if something happens to her. That part landed for me because underneath all of Kristen's chaos and bad choices, the fear there felt real. She really believes her life is on the line. Now, over at home, EJ gets back and here Sydney is going on a girls' trip with Kristen, which already feels like the setup to some terrible timing. Then he finds Lexie collapsed on the floor and panics hard enough to call for Dr. Rolfe, only for Rita to inform him that Rolfe is gone because the heat got too high and there was nothing more he could do. Which, first of all, if Dr. Rolfe disappears from your medical case, that is not a sign things are stabilizing. That is a sign you are in the final chapter. Rita also calmly explains that this is just part of the process and Lexie will pass out and come around until the end. Very matter of fact. Very chilling. And then we got one of the episode's biggest confrontations, because Alex joins Stephanie in reception and calls her out for deleting the message. Stephanie begs him to listen, saying she only saw the start of the transcript and thought it was just more car trouble and Joy wanting attention. Which, okay, maybe that is what she thought, but that still does not make it okay. Alex is furious, calls her jealous, and says they can't go on like this. Go home, Steph. Cold. Blunt. And honestly deserved in that moment, even if I still think Alex has been carrying his own pile of confusion into this mess. And while Stephanie is getting sent away, EJ is forcing his rage back down and telling Rita there's one more thing left to do. Get the private island ready for Kristen. Not kill her, apparently, but disappear her. He plans to send her away to live out the rest of her days far, far away from Salem, and no one will be the wiser. Which is, in true soap fashion, somehow both less murderous and deeply unhinged. Like, congratulations on choosing abduction over execution, I guess? And then Lexie wakes up just in time to hear enough to know what he's plotting, which is the kind of loose end EJ really should know better than to leave lying around. So then we move into the next wave of drama, and the show keeps stacking pieces like it knows exactly how much trouble is coming. EJ strolls up to Felicity and Kat while they're having breakfast in the square, and little Felicity immediately starts grilling him about whether he and Kat are dating. I loved that because children on soaps are either weirdly quiet or weirdly blunt, and this one chose blunt. Kat tries to shoo her off. EJ offers to let Felicity drive his Lamborghini once she gets her license, which is absurdly over the top and exactly the kind of rich guy flex EJ would think is charming. And then the second Felicity steps away, Kat texts her sister to thank her for sticking to the script because it worked perfectly. So now we know that whole cute little breakfast scene was not nearly as casual as it looked. That was a setup. And anytime Kat is running a script around EJ, I get interested, because she may not be the loudest schemer in Salem, but she is observant, and Marlena pulling her into the larger EJ mess later only makes that more suspicious in a good way. Meanwhile, Lexie tries calling Kristen and has to leave a voicemail, then almost collapses again before Abe comes in, asking where Theo is. She plays it off, says Theo needs space and that she needs space too, and then tells Abe she wants to go visit her mom alone. Without him, Abe is worried, which makes total sense, because something is off and he can feel it even if he can't name it. But Lexie is locked into this plan of slipping away before anyone can stop her. It is heartbreaking and frustrating at the same time, which usually means the show is doing its job. And once Kristen finally calls back, Lexie meets her in the park and tries to tell her that EJ is planning something, only to collapse onto the bench before she can really get it out. Kristen wants to call 911, but Lexie stops her because she cannot let the family find out she is dying again. She makes Kristen promise not to tell anyone. And then, in one of the saddest little exchanges in this whole mess, she says she's going to run off and disappear, so they do not have to watch her die again. Kristen, of all people, responds with genuine sorrow and curses their brother. That scene actually worked for me because it stripped away the usual demerit games and just gave us two sisters dealing with a nightmare. And then Lexie finally tells Kristen the other thing, that EJ is planning to send her to a private island. Kristen's response is basically, I guess that's better than killing me, but not much, which honestly is a very Salem way to weigh your options. Like, should I be grateful for exile? Probably not. But Kristen still refuses to explain exactly why EJ is so furious with her, and that's where the show keeps teasing us.
It's complicated, she says. Sure.
On this show, it's complicated usually means multiple crimes, family betrayal, and at least one lie told for love. Now, over with Brady and Marlena, they talk about Rachel coming home and Kristen freaking out over EJ. Since Kristen would not fully explain what was going on, they kind of brush it aside as long as Rachel isn't involved, and then they move on to the arsenic mystery. Brady still believes DMera Pharmaceuticals is behind what happened, and he is not fully ruling out Holly taking the drugs herself either, which Holly would absolutely hate hearing. But he says he went back and got another water sample for the ISA to test because he suspected EJ tampered with the first one. That was smart, honestly, and way more proactive than people sometimes get around Salem when a villain is right in front of them. Marlena even says she thinks EJ has a heart, which, I mean, maybe technically. A heart that keeps choosing chaos is still a heart, I guess. And she says she's going to make a phone call to help Brady, which turns out to involve Kat. At the hospital, Holly is already spiraling for a totally different reason. She's upset about Amy's revenge plan. Her mom is back in Paris, or maybe barely existed in town at all. Sarah doesn't believe her about the drugs, and the only family left in Salem is an aunt who sees her as a lying addict. Holly being grateful Sarah saved her life, while also telling her to leave her alone, felt very teen and very wounded, and honestly I understood it. If nobody believes you, the gratitude only goes so far. And Brady finds Sarah, who is upset because Holly is upset with her, and he tells her to just hang on until the ISA results come back. Only those results come back almost instantly, and they are useless because there's no Cory seal in the water and no arsenic either. Dead end. Then we find out Julie had the water decontaminated, so there is basically nothing left to test. That is one of those maddening soap obstacles where you just want someone to put a sign on the hospital wall that says please stop cleaning away the evidence. But that's where Brady's investigation stands now, completely stuck. At the same time, Marlena privately tells Kat about the Cory seal and arsenic situation and says she found something relevant to her investigation about EJ. That is a very loaded little moment, because Marlena does not usually loop random people into criminal suspicion unless she thinks they can help, or unless they already know more than they're saying. So now Kat is quietly in the orbit of this EJ storyline in a bigger way, and I do not think that is accidental. And then, to make things even messier, EJ shows up at Holly's hospital room with flowers and sympathy, and the exact kind of calm reassurance a vulnerable teenager is going to latch onto. He tells her he has a plan to get Amy's case dismissed and promises he will always have her back. Holly opens up about feeling alone, and EJ tells her he has family too, and worse, he sincerely tells her he believes she didn't do drugs. Which is rich, because he's the one who framed her. That scene was classic manipulator behavior. He identifies the emotional gap and steps right into it. Sarah walks in, sees EJ with Holly, throws him out, and Holly immediately gets furious at Sarah again. So now Sarah looks like the bad guy while EJ plays hero. Toxic, effective, and very on brand. So that is where the board stands, and honestly it is a disaster in the best soapy sense. EJ is threatening Kristen while secretly planning her exile. Lexie is dying and trying to vanish before her family can say goodbye. Brady is chasing evidence that keeps evaporating. Holly is being emotionally isolated and pulled toward the exact man who set her up. And Alex and Stephanie are hanging by a thread because one deleted voicemail may have blown up whatever trust they had left. So let's talk theories because this is where it gets really good. First up, I think Lexie is the loose end EJ absolutely cannot control, and that is going to matter fast. I suspect the show did not have her overhear the island plan just for her to quietly fade away without changing anything. Even in her weakened state, Lexie now knows two huge things. EJ is behind the circumstances surrounding her decline, and he is planning to make Kristen disappear. That is explosive. Now, I'm not saying Lexie is about to launch a full anti-EJ reign of terror from her sickbed, because physically she is barely holding on, but I could absolutely see her becoming the conscience bomb in this story. Maybe she records a message. Maybe she leaves proof with Marlena. Maybe she tells Abe at the last possible second. But I'm betting her death story and Kristen's survival story are linked now, and EJ is too arrogant to see it. And the reason I think that matters is because Lexie is operating from a very different emotional place than everybody else. Kristen is scared. Brady is suspicious. Marlena is cautious. Holly is vulnerable. But Lexie? Lexie is out of time. And when somebody feels like they have nothing left to lose, they can get very honest very quickly. That's dangerous for EJ. He is great at intimidating people who still have futures to protect. He is less equipped to handle somebody who is staring death in the face and deciding she will not let him keep hurting the family after she's gone. Honestly, that is the kind of final act twist I would love. Next, I really do think Kristen is going to turn this island plan around on EJ, because Kristen is many things, but passive on the way to exile is not one of them. I mean, even when she looks cornered, she is usually already thinking about the side door, the backup phone, the hidden leverage, the secret ally, the last-minute hostage situation, something. I'm not saying she has the upper hand right now, because she clearly doesn't, but I wonder if her fear is going to sharpen her rather than break her. And if she already suspects this threat is more real than EJ's usual bluster, then she may start making preparations before he can move. What could that look like? Well, my guess is Kristen starts distributing insurance. Maybe she tells Marlena more than she wanted to. Maybe she leaves something with Brady tied to Rachel's safety. Maybe she finally spits out why EJ is so enraged with her in the first place. Because here's the thing, the less Kristen explains, the less help she can get. And Days made a point of having her ask Marlena to look after Rachel if something happens to her. That felt like preemptive contingency planning. I could see Kristen deciding that if she's doomed either way, she may as well blow the whole DiMera machine wide open on her way down.